Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Facebook Live. Actually, it's not a Facebook Live, but our weekly Masterclass Q&A. Can you hear okay, Carl? Yeah, is everything good? Can you guys hear me good? Sound check? All right, great. So we had several questions come in this week, and we also, as you know, Mark Walsh had the session last week. He's unable to do the Facebook. I got to get off the Facebook Live. He's unable to do the Q&A because he's in the middle of a training. There they are. There's Don and Julie. Let me go and open up their mics. Hi, Don. Hi, Julie. How are you doing?
Hi. Nice to see you, everybody.
Nice to see you guys. So, so I invited Don and Julie to join me for the question and answer. And also, I see that Randy Bonifay is here, and Randy's also a teacher for many, many years now. Hi, Randy. In Dallas, also Midwest generally. And I thought, Randy, if we float a question your way, would you be willing to chime in? All right, great. Good. So this is going to be a roundtable Q&A. And towards the end, if anybody else wants to jump in as well, we will give some space to that. Don, you're not working?
No, they actually are. A building is still closed for the day.
All right. So first is, let me say, I'm happy to see that Don and Julie are with us. They were in the middle of the hurricane. You guys want to say something about that?
Well, it was quite an adventure, that's for sure. And we're really grateful that it turns out we were fine. We left our home, we packed some things up, and we went to the east coast of Florida, where when we got there, we lost power overnight and had some flooding. And we came back here, I think we lost power for 10 minutes and everything was just fine. So, but I still think it was the right decision to evacuate.
Well, Temple was supposed to be ground zero, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, at what point, right? The projections kept really shifting quite a lot, but right. We did see some. We did a jog this morning, and we saw a lot of debris around. We ourselves had a lot of debris in the yards. We saw two houses that had some damage. One with a tree right through the middle of it. So it could have been bad.
Wow. Well, good. I'm happy it wasn't any worse than it was, and I'm also happy that you're not working today, so you can have a coffee and. For this Q&A. Did you guys get a chance to look at the questions? We got about 6 questions. We may not get to all of them today, but we'll let you dive in and see where. And I sent them to you. Did you get a chance to look at them?
Yeah.
We sure did. We discussed them, and we kind of figured that we could speak really on any of them, whatever comes up. Really, we spoke at length about all the questions.
Well, I got a suggestion. Why don't we take turns? Each one of us pick one, and then you give your feedback on it, and then we can go to the next one.
Sure. Okay.
Julie, you want to go first?
Sure.
Maybe read the question so everybody else can know what it is, and then we'll.
Okay.
Or are you prepared, or you want me to jump in first?
No, we're prepared.
Okay, great. All right.
Okay, so maybe we'll start with Bob Pierce's question.
Great.
Bob is from the Bay Area in California. Bob writes, the part of Mark's talk that resonated with me is the realization that the issues I struggle with on the mat are valid and quite common. One of the larger difficulties is finding a way to discuss these concerns with my sensei. In some cases, I'm embarrassed to talk about them because I've trained for so long, they should be resolved by now. I've made my teachers people who are solely focused on technique, even though I know in my heart that is ridiculous. So I wonder, how can I shatter this wall I've created between me and my teachers? I thought about this myself because I've had a number of teachers, and I think that's a big challenge. I think that a lot of teachers just teach technique and expect that you're going to get everything out of the technique. But for myself, I found that as the student, I have to take the initiative, and I have to show some vulnerability to my teacher. If I want my teacher to help me, I can do my technique. I'm Sandan, so I've been training 18 years. I can do technique. I can stay there at that level. But what I found is that if I want to grow in my practice and I want to try to change the relationship with my teachers, I have to show some initiative. I have to show some vulnerability in myself, some willingness to be open, or take on the responsibility myself. So that was my reflection. You know, if I want to change the relationship with my sensei, I can't look to my sensei to know that I want to do that. I have to show something different.
Mm. Yeah, I actually agree with that. And that's also related to a couple of the other questions that came up that I think we're going to get into. But so let me just, if I can ask you a little bit more, Julie. So I kind of agree with you. You're saying that ultimately, I mean, maybe there's always a two-way street. You know, there's us and the teacher. But for you, and it's kind of a good practice rule that you say ultimately the responsibility is your own.
Yes, and I think I actually remember you saying that in the student-teacher relationship, it's always the student's responsibility to go to the teacher.
Yeah, it might have been a slightly different context, and I usually say that across the board. But the caveat is that it may be completely the student's responsibility, but the caveat is that it's a good attitude to have as a student. Mm-hmm. That, you know, we should be proactive towards the teacher, and of course there's always a dynamic relationship there. So, mm-hmm.
And yeah, one way that I found that's pretty good to be able to do that is to do atogeko, to do practice after class, and start to look into the things that are actually interesting for you, or things that are actually difficult for you, and that after a while that tends to catch the teacher's eye. You know, and hopefully that might initiate some interactions or conversation off the mat. And I mean, I don't know specifically to what Bob is referring to, but it sounds like he wants to go deeper into his practice.
Yeah, yeah.
I think, you know, just echoing a little bit on that, I know that Satomi Sensei has often said, you know, are you baby bird? You open mouth, being fed all the time, you know, that's the way he speaks his chapels, you know. So it's like, yes, in the beginning we are like a baby bird, you know, and we have to be fed by our teacher. But if we remain in that state for a long time, I think we're doing ourselves and our teacher a disservice. And so I would echo what Julie's saying, especially I would say at the Sandan level, that's really when you have to start taking charge of your own training, because I think that's what part of the Sandan responsibility is that.
Yeah. I agree with that. And I love that you put it in this kind of developmental scheme of maturity. You know, at a certain point, we do have to stand on our own and find our own way forward. That's cool.
Someone asked me who my teacher is, you know, and I think I even asked you that, Miles, you know, and of course I say immediately, my teacher is Satomi Shihan, right? Of course. Right. But on the other hand, it's like, he's at this different space. Is he really my technical teacher? Like, you know, I feel like at this point in my, you know, I've been training, you know, 28 or 9 years, you know, I'm Godan in Aikido. And, you know, I feel I have to have my own responsibility for my training.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So I'll tell you what, Don, why don't you take the next one? But I just want to point Randy to the chat. Randy, I added a question here from Rich Sims. I think I actually put the same question twice, sorry. But maybe you can look at that and think it over, and we'll pass the baton to you after Don, if you'd be so gracious. Okay, Don.
Well, it's funny because I was going to use the question by Rich.
Use that one. Okay, Randy, forget it. I'm going to pick another one.
No, I'll pick another question.
No, you take that one. You take that one, Don. I'm sorry. I got another one for here. I don't know
why I just picked that one.
Sorry.
So Rich Sims from Evanston, Illinois says, I'm always looking for interesting or new ways to describe, especially to beginners, how their Aikido practice will probably affect their behavior towards themselves and others off the mat. Any interesting examples to share? And so I think for me, this is an interesting question because it kind of delves back into the why I personally practice Aikido, why I think it's valuable. And I do want to be able to describe that to others. And oftentimes I find myself saying that I think that at heart, most of us are somatic learners, which means we learn in the body. Mm-hmm. And the Aikido for me is this kind of philosophy in the action, in the moment. You know, so when I speak to beginners, I say, we could read about philosophy. You know, you can read about all kinds of things. And perhaps some people can even do it just by reading about it, you know. But I suspect for many of us, we have to feel it in the body. So when I talk about Aikido practice, I think when we do our movements, this is philosophy in motion. And this is what Satomi Sensei talks to us about a lot. that Aikido is where the rubber hits the road, right? So you have to do your Tenkan, you have to do your Imi, you have to do your kindness, generosity thing in the body, in the moment, under adversity. And I think that through that practice in my body, for me, I found it does affect my heart, and I've seen it in others affect their hearts. And you can more easily work with it off the mat when it's not physical. But because it's in your DNA, it becomes in your body. Like, I hate to say in your DNA, that seems so trite, but it's somehow it gets inside deep from the practice. So I explain it to students when they ask me, what's the difference of Aikido practice versus karate or something else? Well, tongue in cheek, in some ways I don't like to compare it to other martial arts, but I'll say, well, what I find different about Aikido is, for me, it allows me to practice this kind of philosophy in motion.
Yeah, beautiful. Great. Cool.
I wish Rich was here to expand more on that a little bit, but
yeah.
But
Look, I mean, probably Julie as well, probably others. I know we could add a lot to it, but because there's a lot of questions, I thought we would just take one question each, and just I'm gonna hold myself back as well from wanting to add to that one. But I actually think that was great, Don. Thanks, Randy. I tell you, I added a question there from Morris Saul. How about I'll give you another moment to read, to kind of chew on that one, and then I'll take one, and then we'll come to you. Now, there's two questions here. One's from Tammy Bowcutt, and the other, and she's in Washington, D.C. The other is from Kelly Bannister in BC, Canada. And I find these two questions quite related, actually. I think I'll take with Tammy's from Tammy Bowcutt's question, which is an interesting one that I also experienced in my own Aikido. So Tammy says, how do we as Aikido students, not teachers, who can define the class, but as students, how do we find a way to both honor the traditional teaching styles of our lineages while also adopting our training to incorporate some of the ideas that Mark brought up? Tammy says, I have a dual lineage that comes from Yamada Sensei and Sugano Sensei. So that's the USAF line. And I also have a West Coast side from Wendy Palmer and from Richard Strozzi Heckler's coaching. She says that I can play both, but how to bring the latter to the traditional dojo that is not mine. So I think that her dilemma is how to fit let's just call Richard and Wendy, who are also coaches. Let's just say it's a more progressive Aikido as opposed to more traditional Aikido, certainly Japanese lineage. Don and Julie have a Japanese lineage. I also have a Japanese lineage. Many of us here. And God bless the Japanese lineage. It's clear cut. It's sharp. The line is straight down from the founder to the teacher to the student, and it's clearly defined. It's got a beautiful Japanese culture that goes with it, and at the same time, it's limited. It has its own limitations. The more we define, the clearer the limitations are. So now, personally, I see things developmentally, and I see cultures also develop, and I believe that we've evolved from traditional to modern, from modern to postmodern. And clearly what she's talking about with Richard Strozzi Heckler, Wendy Palmer, coaching, somatic coaching, it's a postmodern technology. So it's a postmodern Aikido. The culture is very different. So now postmodern Aikido cannot fit in a traditional structure. Traditional structure is hierarchical. Postmodern is horizontal, circular. So it just doesn't fit inside. However, traditional can fit inside postmodern. Postmodern is just a bigger, if you think of concentric circles, there's traditional, then there's more space for the modern, and there's more space for the postmodern. There's a lot of conflict between those different cultures, and it's way too much to go into here. But it's difficult because Tammy says, how do I do the other stuff, let's say the progressive, the postmodern stuff, in my traditional dojo? And I would actually recommend you giving up that attempt. Don't even try. I fully believe and love the one you're with. Go deep in your own lineage, because lineage does go deep. Yamada Sensei, Sugano Sensei. I've met Yamada Sensei. I didn't really train in that lineage, but I also have a Japanese lineage. And you could say it's the hierarchy is clear. It might be a little bit more narrow. It might be a little bit more rigid, but the benefit of that is it goes really deep, and you can penetrate to the source of stuff. But just like they say in organizational development, culture trumps values every single time. So you might have more inclusive values, you might have more subjective values, you might have more dialogue values, more horizontal values. Let's share, let's talk about this, how does this work together? But traditional culture doesn't respect that. I mean, it respects it, but traditional culture is kind of a hierarchical structure. The person positioned at the top is sharing their wisdom downward. When it's good, it's really good. When it's not good, it's kind of problematic. It's about, there can be power stuff going on. But the culture that's within your dojo is set by whoever's in the position of power. And, usually it's the teacher or the group of seniors. And that position of power, that could be a hierarchical structure, like the traditional Japanese way. It could be a postmodern structure. It doesn't matter, where we're all kind of equal. There might be a board of directors, or, there might be a co-op or something. But it's really difficult to impact culture unless you have some power. So unless you're an assistant teacher or even more of a regular teacher. So it's going to be a tough one to do. It's going to be an uphill battle. And I can tell you, even when you're in a position of power, even when you're teaching, it's incredibly difficult to change culture. I came straight out of the Iwama tradition, and there's few people in the Iwama world that train like that with Saito Sensei as much as I did. There are people who have, and there's certainly people training longer than me, that's for sure. But, I was there for 8 years, and I was like, every day, 20 hours a week. I was training with Saito Sensei for 8 years and had 2 days off a week. And I went deep with them. And then as I left Japan, I was impacted by Buddhism. I was impacted by a teacher named Peter Ralston. I was impacted by therapy. Thank you very much. Thank God for therapy. I was impacted by A Course in Miracles. I was impacted by nonviolent communication. I was impacted by teachers like Thomas Hubel, Diane Hamilton, integral theory, Ken Wilber. All of these things just kind of opened me up. And my Aikido is much more inclusive or broader than just the traditional Aikido. And even though I have more experience than most of the people that I know in traditional Iwama Aikido, even though I have more experience than most people that I know in the traditional Iwama Aikido, when I teach an Iwama group, I can kind of inspire them and maybe even impress them. But when it comes to changing them, it's tough. And it's, to be honest, my experience is it's kind of a waste of energy. And my energy is precious. It's no more precious than yours, but with the family and business and all that stuff, I want my energy to have an effect. So I'm putting my energy in a place where it has the most effect. I want to go where the door's open, not where the door's closed. So that's what I would suggest in your situation. Really give up trying to change it. Love the one you're with. Go deep with the lineage. If you ever feel like you've hit the limitation, there's just nothing else there, and you've got to face a big decision whether you kind of move on or you just kind of stay there. But it's a tough position to be in, and I really appreciate where you're at, and wish you all the best. That's my take on that one. Randy, your microphone is open.
I lost you. Are you still there? Can you hear me?
Miles mic'd his own. Miles muted his own mic.
Oh, he muted his own mic. He didn't want to hear me.
Okay, sorry.
All right. So the question is a multi-question inside of a question. I understand from the talk, when we face our daily problems, it is good to start from a body posture, literally into an Aikido posture. I've watched a lot of Paul Linden's work. I have a background as a certified Rolfer and 35 years of Aikido. And posture to me is one of the key things that I observe in people when they're training, especially beginners, how they walk in the dojo. And when you can take someone who comes in whose eyes are looking down at the ground and shoulders are rolled in, and you take this person and help them move to a position where they're leading from their heart and they look you in the eyes, all of a sudden we have transformed that person, or we have helped transform that person. They transform themselves. All we are is vessels to to help them do that. It's them that does it, but it's our job as a teacher of movement to help them get to that place. And there's many modalities of how to get to that place, but I think Aikido can help. I don't know if it is the only way to get there. I think there's plenty of ways to get there. I think the other day in our talk, talking about yoga, different ways that people get to the same place. But yes, I think posture can turn you into a different person.
Totally.
And how you walk through life. The rest of this question is I'm not sure where I'm going to go with this.
Yeah. Well, it's a little bit
not
so crystal clear what he's asking.
Yeah. In addition, when we run into a problem, conflict situations, would it be helpful to sense the forces in the situation we are in as yin and yang and go with the flow like we are doing Aikido? Well, this is truly taking Aikido off the mat. I work in situations where I also have a business that goes out and does corporate meetings and sets up things. So I work with union crews all the time, and quite often I come into situations that are hostile. A group of Teamsters who don't want to be working and they want more money or whatever they want. And I have to use my Aikido on a constant basis. And if I approach them from a yang point of view and they're already yang, all we're going to do is clash. I mostly walk into a situation and say, hold it, guys, this is my fault. I miscommunicate with you guys. And so how can we fix this? How can we talk about this? And it usually diffuses the situation. All of a sudden, it's not a you against me. It's a how can we fix this problem?
Right. You connect with them first. By making a statement that way, you create a connection, a resonance with them, and then.
Right. And I'll relate this back to my Rolfing also, is that I've worked with people who were bodybuilders who were enormously strong people, and if I try to force my way into their bodies, it never works. So I try to take the yang point of view and just fall into their bodies, and they're amazed that I can get as deep as I can because.
Randy, when you say yang, you mean the soft, the yin?
The soft, the yin. I mean the yin.
Okay, yeah, right.
Yes, it's amazing. They say nobody's been able to work on me this deep, and it's like I go, I can't fight where you are. I just can't do it. And it happens on the mat too. So it is that flow situation that we're looking for.
That's awesome. Yeah, and that happens kind of intuitively, I guess, at the level that you're at. It's not like you calibrate, you say, let me try some yin, let me try some yang. You just meet a situation and intuitively your body or your mind body knows where to go.
Now, yes. It didn't happen at first, and right. I think it's something that we have to work on. And going back to what Don was saying and Julie were saying, I'm not sure that the sensei is always the one that you have to go to. Sometimes he is. Sometimes it's your therapist. Sometimes it's your coach. Right. I think that's what I was hearing last week also and agreeing with, or the other day on a session, is that we need to diversify what we're learning. It's not just on the mat. There's other things that we can bring from outside that's going to influence what happens on the mat.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's awesome. Great. Cool, Randy. Thank you so much.
So the last part of that question was, are there other learnings, other disciplines and practices that we can add to this?
Well, actually, yesterday I was watching this very interesting interview with David Blaine, the magician, you know,
Yeah.
the guy. And he was saying how partway through his magician's training, he decided to take acting classes, and it completely changed everything.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
Because then he became an actor playing a magician.
An actor playing a magician. And when we're on the mat, Satomi Sensei often tells us in the middle of class, I copy you, you know, and he'll make these faces of like, you know, I'm copying you right now. This is what you look like, or spacing out, you know. And then he'll say, you actor, you know, you're acting. Be the actor, like be the role that you want,
right,
you know, in your Aikido. So I kind of see this as it is helpful to know how to act, to be an actor. It's helpful to be able to be in the situation and, like you were saying, Randy, see what these guys, what's going on here, what's really going on, and then say, hey guys, seems like, you know, we need to see how we can work this out together. And also I was thinking about, you know, salespeople, when you first start in sales, you kind of do this mirroring and you learn all these techniques, but over time, it does start to become natural. You don't have to try to understand where people are coming from. You naturally will fall into this yin yang of mirroring the voice and using inclusive language and all these kinds of things. But I think you can do it the long way and just practice and not think about your practice and hope that it's seeping through, or you can do it consciously and bring these more Western.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And what I'm hearing in this whole dialogue is that, you know, it's like, this is where I think it's part of our responsibility to first kind of really work on our own interior, to find our own authenticity within the form, within the tradition. We might have to go out, but really find that authentic place and then connect with another person, like Randy was saying. And the whole thing with acting, I'm trying to take another perspective, but find it in an authentic way. So, you know, not just copying, I can act, look at me, I'm acting, I'm whoever, Charlie Chaplin or whatever, but to authentically embody that other perspective. For me, that's totally Aikido. That's really kind of creating this place where we can take perspectives and then somehow find the way forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what does Sensei say? Every person is just the universe from another point of view. Isn't that one of his quotes?
Totally. Yeah, I love it.
But I would say, as far as a practice to do, easy answer is meditation. Right? If you want another practice to do to help your Aikido, meditation probably is the answer.
Yeah, it's the basis for meditation. I would say it's probably the foundation practice that fits everything else. Whereas not everything does that. So cool. Don or Julie, did you guys want to take one of the next questions or one of the others?
Sure.
We've gone 30 minutes. Let's say we've got about 10 more minutes to go.
Yeah.
If everybody can stick around, that'd be great. Please do.
Let's see. Which one did we not? Did we answer?
The last one. Did we do Ellie?
Not yet.
Ellie asked a simple question. What are the specific centering practices you engage in most outside the dojo? We had an interesting conversation about this because Don was wondering, does that mean practice like meditation? Something you consciously go and do? Or does that mean a kind of something that maybe Paul Linden might prescribe, as in, you know, bring your chest, you know, forward, your spine, and
relax the tongue.
I think maybe that could include both of those things.
I agree. I completely agree.
I mean, specifically, I'm not sure where I learned these, but somewhere along the way, somebody told me about drinking a glass of water. And if you were drinking water, you would have to kind of open up here. And, you know, this puts everything in alignment for me, this feeling of if I was drinking something. And then recently I've been having the kids feel, in my youth class, I teach a lot of youth classes, what would it feel like if you put a book on your head? And you trained like that. Those are specific. I know Mark talked about tracing a square with your eyes, and this can change your consciousness.
Julie, because you're a classical musician. You play violin?
Yes.
So how does that apply to your playing of the violin? I mean, do you play like this?
Centering practices. No. There's been a long, deep looking into where I hold tension in my body, and yes, I think it's very similar to Aikido. You scan and you look for places that you might be holding tension, and as you release the tension, it changes things on the outside.
Does it change the music?
Oh yeah.
Or does it change the just the basic sound of the violin?
It changes the easeability of playing. You know, for a long time, my bow hand, I didn't even realize that I had a lot of stiffness in my bow hand and my shoulder. You know, kind of playing like this. And somebody, one of the leaders in the group, you know, pushed my shoulder down like this. And I didn't even think, oh, you can play that way? So that
like Aikido.
Yeah, and what I've noticed over the past 2 years, probably especially because I've been doing a lot more playing in big groups and small groups, that also is actually something that just came up for me is watching people who I think are centered. Watching people who I think are very relaxed, who have a natural feel and have seemingly very few obstacles. People that, like concert players, listening, watching, and in this case, watching the ukes for the shihan, watching people whose ukemi I respect, looks painless, flawless, something like that. I think those things, I think naturally we have this thing in ourselves that we want to emulate that. We want to come closer to that. So then I want to find it for myself. I want to look into how do I find that for myself. So
yeah, like in an authentic way.
Yeah. So
it's your own Aikido, your own playing.
Yeah. So for Ellie's question, she can do these like outside practices, like meditation. She can do these internal practices, like putting the book on the head or drawing the square with the eyes. But the reflection, what works for me? What really works for me? How does it feel when I'm centered? How do I remember this? I think without that piece, it's not going to happen.
Right.
That's that authentic feeling.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like we said, that meditation is the core practice for everything else. I think anything you do in the body, even including violin or walking with a book on your head or whatever it is, centering is the core practice. I agree with you completely. Cool.
Yeah, I mean, I had mine were way just on a much smaller scale. I was thinking about her question, and I think if you're having a confrontation and in the moment, you can even if your mind can just break for a second to think about doing something else, that's win number one, right? Because I think that mostly when you're engaged, especially the closer someone is to your heart, the more difficult it is, at least in my experience, to break away from that and start checking in. But if I can, the moment occurs where I can check in with myself for a moment and go, what am I doing here? Then I have the opportunity to say, okay, what is my posture doing? You know, more like what Paul Linden would say is, you know, can I relax? I don't know some of the language uses just yet, but yeah, the tongue and the belly.
The tongue, right? Exactly. Yeah.
But for me, it's mostly just, you know, even the other day we were discussing something, and I noticed that my posture was a little forward, very slightly forward, and aggressive because I was feeling a little aggressive in my moment. And,
sure.
And just being able to, it's very subtle, right? It wasn't like I was like this, but it was like just a little bit, and just my own self coming back and leaning back and but I don't know how you get the light bulb to stop the interaction and go to the check-in space. That's the part I don't know how to control that piece. It's like the aha moment of solving a problem. It occurs for people and it occurs, but we don't know why that aha moment occurs.
Yeah.
And if I can get there, then I can remember the basics, like my breath.
Totally. Yeah. It's about remembering. Yeah. And it's like, you know, there could be 100,000 things that take us out of our center. But what brings us back to the center is fundamentally this kind of, like you said, this remembering, wait a second, you know, there's this self-reflection. And if we can strengthen the self-reflection, then our coming back to center happens more frequently.
And to wrap this back around, that's the somatic practice of Aikido, right? We're always practicing under adversity, and you have to just
with awareness. Hopefully, in the dojo, that we're bringing that awareness is in the center of the space, and this is the practice. Everything we do, it's Ikkyo, Nikkyo, Sankyo, but it's really center, or connection.
What we do on the mat comes off the mat. I'm sorry, Randy.
Hey, Miles, I think also getting back to what Mark said the other day, I think we talk a lot about how we can take our Aikido into our everyday life. But we also do things in our everyday life that should be able to come back and reflect and be reflected in our Aikido.
Totally.
So I think we have to be permeable both ways.
Completely.
I think we just have to be able to bring it in and out of our practice.
Yeah, and I can appreciate, this is the question that Tammy was asking, because she was learning practices in an Aikido space out in California with Wendy Palmer and Richard Strozzi Eckler that were much more progressive and non-traditional. Now, her challenge was how to bring that back into her dojo. And clearly it's not about going in and changing her dojo, but at the same time, embodying what she learned and taking that into the traditional context. And that's her job to do, not the dojo's job.
Right.
So listen, I would say that what I want to do, there's two more questions. We'll push those to next week. I just want to make one comment on this last thing, and then we can open up also to let Carl or Daniel, if you guys want to chime in on some of this, we can. If anybody needs to leave, thanks for coming. My take on this kind of Aikido, there's so many centering exercises. First, I would say I agree with Julie that we need to think of 2 or 3 centers. There's the center of the body, which everybody knows. That's what we're doing in Aikido. Center of the mind is mindfulness. We're not in the future. We're not in the past. We drop into the present moment. It's good to anchor our awareness in the body somehow. Feel our body, feel this. That's a good anchor point to keep us in the present moment. But there's also emotional center of the heart. Just kind of feel in where you're at emotionally, or feel where your heart's at. Is it open, closed? And that automatically, that reflection, remembering to do that, will bring us into the center. But then I would think that the big issue here is that we are reflexively, instinctually driven out of our center by reality, by our experience. So I would say that it's also important to think of the domains that we practice in. And one domain that I practice in is me and me alone, un solo. It's in myself. Okay, let me do meditation. Let me walk down the street. I could do Tai Chi. I could do Suburi. I could swim, whatever. It's my own practice. That's one domain where I can develop center. The second domain is in the world, or in nature, or in the city, where I'm actually walking through the city, not relating with anybody, but just walking and relating with nature or the city, if it's not out in nature, and practice center there, because there's energies coming all the time and practicing center there. So first person, third person, outside, there's things out there that I practice my centering with. And then of course, the third domain, which is the most challenging, is relational, with another person face to face, or where we're actually in relationship with the other person. There's the we space, so there's the I, the we, and the it. And those 3 domains, we're always in one of those 3 domains, always, whether awake or sleep, we're always in one of those 3 domains. And we need to, sorry guys, that's my wife. Speaking of I need to practice my center in a moment. No, I need to practice my center here. We have a birthday party tomorrow, so we're in all kinds of crazy preparations. Those 3 domains, we're always in one of those 3 domains. We're always in the first person, the I, or we're in the we, or we're in the it. And in the dojo, like in Iwama, my Aikido, the culture of the training was very much strong on the I and very much strong on the it. A lot of technical training, a lot of strong center, but not so strong in the we. We were kind of pounding each other. We were kind of slamming each other. And it was this hardcore traditional Japanese training. It was fine up to a certain point. But then I had to go outside of that to really kind of develop more this relational, subtle connection type of we practice.
But you get to have that base the whole rest of your Aikido life, right? Nobody can take that away.
That's one thing to say, but I know people they're just relational monsters. They're really good at it, or life pushed them there, or they've just done a lot of it. They're more of a relational person, and they come into Aikido, and right away, they can be intimate, they can be connected, and they may not know how to do Ikkyo, Nikkyo, Sankyo, but that's an issue. That's a domain where they're just natural. They move quite. The energetic between two people is always something that's quite strong. So yeah, and it depends. I mean, that was a conscious choice on my part. Part of it was because I loved that and I excelled there, but another part of it was because the relational thing I was a bit avoiding. You know, to a certain distance, it was all good, but I realized that I had to open that up for my Aikido to become better. I'm going to close my mic. Somebody's at my door. Let's open up.
I'm going to guess he opened it up to everyone.
Open up all the mics. Carl's mic is open.
Yeah.
Daniel, your mic is open.
Yeah, Daniel, do you have anything you want to add?
No, right now I'm good.
What about you, Carl? Do you have anything you would like to bring forward for the conversation?
So some head nodding and some things like that going on, Carl.
Well, I'm seeing some very good things happening here. I would only say that if you are training to transform yourself, what you take off the mat is you.
Yeah.
And what you bring onto the mat is you. So can you transform yourself in daily life? Can you transform yourself on the mat? How to do that is going to be different for every one of us.
Yeah, totally.
And how has it worked for you, Carl? How have you been able to, what are some examples in your life for transforming yourself on the mat and off the mat in your practice?
Off the mat, nature, very much. Trying to observe and see the beauty in nature. On the mat, I try and sometimes succeed in seeing the beauty of the energy in what Miles talks about as the flow space. And still being honest with where I'm at and the conflict and the personal relationships and my disability. My legs are crippled. And I have to shut up because it's 8:45 and I have an appointment in town. So I have to go. And thank
Thanks for being here, Carl.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Carl. I appreciate it. Also, I just wanted to say, Carl, I got an email from Carl, I think yesterday or today. Sorry I haven't answered you yet, Carl, but he tells me that he lives off the map, I guess, somewhere out in nature, where he has a radio transmission to another radio transmission to an internet, and then he gets online. So I really appreciate the effort to get online and to join the course.
Great.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Carl. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Carl.
You know, guys, it just occurred to me. There's one more thing. If I can add one thing, and then I'll open the space to you guys. That I think also developmentally, and it's related to somebody's question in there. I don't remember who, but developmentally, when we go in as a student, it's kind of our responsibility just to really shut up and train and copy what is being given to us. Hopefully, it's something that we feel good with, and we just copy it. But at a certain point, Don was pointing out Sandan level, and it's usually around Shodan level for sure. It starts to awaken that you move from this kind of conformity stage to an application stage, where naturally you're thinking, well, how does this apply to this? Or how does this apply to that? Some of that conversation goes, how can I apply it to MMA? How can I apply it to street fight? Fine, application's application. But other points is, how can I apply this to relationships? How can I apply this to 2 attackers, 3 attackers, 4 attackers? One has a stick, one has a jo, one has a bokken. How can I apply it to organizations? So there's an application stage that I believe we need to go through before we actually find that authentic place, like Julie was saying, where we actually have an authentic expression of our own Aikido. And I don't think we go from copying our teachers to authentic Aikido. I think we go from copying our teachers and then taking what we copied and learning how to do it ourselves, on the mat and off the mat, I guess especially off the mat. And then eventually we find our way into some authentic expression. And it may include what our teacher taught us, and it may be completely free of what our teacher taught us. It depends on the individual, I guess. So that's the last thing I have to say.
Yeah, that echoes a lot what Satome Sensei saw. I no me copy me, not many Satome, that kind of.
Right. And then still, there's probably a lot of people that copy him.
Of course, of course.
Because I think it's human nature.
For the reasons that you say, though, it's like we're still still in my body, this movement. But I think somehow you talked about this in another context about at some point when you have competencies enough, and now you have the tools and the ability to manifest. Then you can manifest Aikido as it comes out of yourself.
Right. Yeah.
So then you can actually have expression because you're also able to express, and that's the uniqueness that each person brings. Perhaps eventually to the Aikido.
Yeah, and I think that when you go deep enough into the principles and really start to express the principles change your technique. There's no way to stop it. Your technique manifests differently. Like when you're playing violin, it'll manifest differently, but then it's an authentic expression of nature, the principles.
Yeah, that's a great analogy with the violin because, of course, all the players have the same sheet music.
Yeah, right? and the same instrument or the same brand of instrument or whatever it is.
Yeah, so. But they all have different hearts. And so a trained musician will hear something very different from each player. I may not be able to hear the difference. In fact, I cannot, right? But Julie can listen to it and she can hear the difference from the same music, same violin, and be like, wow, that's a different expression. And I hope, and I think Aikido parallels that. We have to learn these basics very well. Just like all those violin players can play exactly the warm-up notes the same way. But if we when it expresses through us, we get a different feeling.
Yeah.
So guys, have any of you seen a movie? It's probably 25 years old now, maybe 20 years old. It's called From Mao to Mozart. Itzhak Perlman goes to China, and it's right after the Cultural Revolution. And he's sitting in a jury, and there's these two young people, and they're playing a violin concerto. And they've never heard a recording. All they're doing is playing the notes. And he lets them go for about a minute. And then he starts saying, stop, stop, stop. And the interpreter starts saying, he goes, no. He stops the interpreter.
Awesome.
He stands up and plays the same thing they were playing. And these two kids go. Because they had never heard it played interpretively. He played it from himself, and they had never had that demonstrated for them. It's like for me watching videos and trying to learn Aikido from a video without ever having another person there. It transforms us to have that relational thing happen with us.
That's
and
awesome.
when you talked about the 5 aspects of learning, it's that instruction that allows us to be able to do what we do.
Great, Randy. I just found it on YouTube. I'm going to post it in our Facebook group. So
it's an awesome movie.
That's awesome. Great. Thanks for that.
When you were talking about your Iwama previous training, Miles, I was thinking we have here in St. Pete, we have the largest Dali museum in the world, I think, is here in St. Petersburg. And, I think about asking, when I think about Dali, if I walked up to Dali in his later years and I said, paint a bowl of fruit, would I get something that looked like a bowl of fruit or not? I'm not sure, right? But he can do it if he has to, right? And so when I think about like Satome Sensei and I ask him to do Shomichi Ikkyo, am I going to get the 5th Shomichi Ikkyo? Probably not. But
no, but you will know it's Shomichi. Sorry?
But there was a time in his life when he could do it exactly that way, and you can see it in
sure.
practice, right?
But you would know that when you feel it, when you experience it, you would know it's Shomichi Ikkyo.
Yeah.
It'd be unquestionable.
Right. But it might be still might be a bowl of fruit with the eyes and like a weird shape.
Totally. Look at, my favorite quote, which I repeat, people are kind of sick of hearing me repeat it, is that, it's from Picasso. Learn the rules like a pro so you can break the rules like an artist.
I love it.
Look at Google early Picasso, you'll see perfect pictures, perfect classic styles. And then late Picasso, it's like perspectives all over the place. So,
well, can I say it reminds me of something that a conversation I had with Satome Sensei one time when I was prepping for my Sandan test a few years ago, and I said, Sensei, when you're watching the test, how do you know the difference between a Nidan test and a Sandan test and a Yondan? And he said to me, Julie, you thinking like this?
Yeah.
Like, no, like he said it's like this.
That's awesome. That's so great. Yeah, he can hear it. He can smell it. The same thing in meditation. Like, you can just by like on a retreat, you watch somebody do their walking meditation, you kind of know where they're at in the practice. So, listen, guys, maybe we close it there. Kelly Bannister just jumped in. So, Kelly, it's great to see you, but we are leaving now. How are you, Kelly?
Good. Just back from the kid drop off and all that.
Great. Well, look, I'm going to get this thing up in about, it might take me a couple hours before I get it up, but I'll get it to our Facebook group as soon as possible. And I have to go to class, so I'm going to.
All right. Thanks, Miles.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Just for the announcements for everybody. So this Sunday is our next masterclass session with Linda Holiday Sensei. I'm actually going to be in Germany teaching a seminar on flying back to Israel exactly at the time of the masterclass, and I've asked Don and Julie to host Linda Sensei for the session. So, onegai shimasu, guys.
All right. Have a safe travels, Miles.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I appreciate it, and I'll be in touch with you guys soon. Okay. Nice job. Thanks for joining me and sharing.
Thanks, Randy.
Thanks.
All right, everybody. Take care.
Awesome session.
Right?
You have no idea. All right. Okay, everybody. Bye-bye.